Paul Roetzer traveled here from, well, actually from Florida, but he's based in Cleveland. Back in August, I read a really great blog post by Scott Brinker. He has a blog called Chief Martech, and I found it so amazing what he was saying about this wonderful new book, and that Paul was going to speak at a conference called Martech, which Scott Brinker was behind, which was held in August and sold out, and Paul debuted his book there. So first I said, well, Scott, we got to get you to Minneapolis here to speak. Oh, I can't make it on the 30th. I go, okay, I'm going for the big guy. I'm going to get Paul, and sure enough, I caught him like between stops, and he was nice enough to agree to come and speak with us. So Paul is CEO of PR 2020 in Cleveland. He founded it in 2005. He's consulted for hundreds of organizations. He's the creator of Marketing Agency Insider and Marketing Score. He's a regular contributor to leading marketing industry blogs and a frequent speaker on agency management, content marketing, inbound marketing, marketing measurement and performance, public relations, social media, and strategy. His new book is all about what's possible when the art and science of marketing collide. How great is that? And if you haven't grabbed a copy of his book yet, there are copies out front courtesy of HubSpot. Get him to sign one during one of the breaks. And we're very glad to have him in Minneapolis. Please welcome Paul Roetzer.
Good morning. So that's a funny introduction. Scott Brinker is one of my people in the industry that I have the utmost respect for, and I've never been said for the big guy was getting me instead of Scott. I would have looked at it the other way around. But if you don't read Scott's stuff, he's phenomenal. He's been talking about the convergence of marketing and tech for probably 7 years now in the chief marketing technologist role. So he's a great guy to read. Study after study tells us that marketers are under an increased pressure to deliver ROI, to connect every action to bottom line results. But those same studies tell us that marketers are largely underprepared and underperforming. So in the new book that Graham mentioned, we look at 7 obstacles that are keeping organizations from evolving, from transforming and taking advantage of what's possible in digital. Today, I want to focus on one of those, and that's accountability. Just 36% of CMOs have connected and proven short-term impact of marketing spend. When you look at long-term impact, that number drops to 29%. So what we have as organizations are marketers that historically have relied on qualitative information, if they're providing any insight at all into the performance of their marketing. On average, marketers depend on data for just 11% of customer-related decisions. So we know that there's immense amounts of data. IBM tells us that 90% of all data in the world is less than 2 years old, and yet marketers aren't using that data to drive customer-related decisions. B2B marketers say just 9% of CEOs and 6% of CFOs use marketing data to set corporate direction. So when we look at the history of marketing, they haven't really had a seat at the C-suite table. They haven't been really there to help impact marketing direction or corporate direction. And this is a large reason why. We're not using the data that's readily available to us to show the value of marketing, to prove that it's actually an investment or an asset and not an expense. So what I want to talk about today is 3 very high-level areas. And if you got a copy of the book, this actually comes from the strategy section. The book is broken into talent, tech, and strategy. And it's a story about the convergence of those 3 areas to achieve what's possible in business. So we're going to talk about building a scorecard right after going through the assessment area. And then we'll end with the game plan. And I'm going to go through a case study at the end of a fascinating company that actually makes me think a little bit about where we are today. And by the way, this is an awesome space, so thank you for hosting us today. The marketing assessment, it's a strategy gateway. And our experience has been a lot of organizations struggle at this area. They don't do what's necessary up front to align expectations and forecast potential. So historically, what we would do as an agency is a company would come to us and they would want, say, 500 new leads a month. And we would think, okay, we'll figure out how to do that. Because 10,000 a month, 15,000 a month, whatever they had to spend, in your mind you think you can always make it happen. And if you're a corporate marketer, you may think the same thing. Someone comes to you, they give you a new goal, and you think, okay, if that's what I'm told to do, I'll figure out how to do it. What we learned is you can't. Sometimes organizations are not structured to succeed or to achieve what they're trying to with their goals. And so we used to use SurveyMonkey to do this. We would do these very qualitative surveys where it would ask people to provide feedback and overall rate themselves, but it wasn't very quantitative. There wasn't anything visual at the end for them. So in 2012, what started happening is we were seeing this incredible churn rate of clients. We saw a lot of people leaving, and I was trying to analyze why. Why aren't we succeeding in keeping these organizations around? And what we realized is we were not very good at forecasting potential. We couldn't look at an organization and predict in a scientific way whether or not we could actually help them succeed. So I built a tool called Marketing Score. It's a free tool. It's just an online assessment. What it does is it takes a subjective analysis. There's 132 data points where they go through and rate themselves on a 0 to 10 scale. And there's 10 sections within it. So today we're going to focus on 2 of these core sections for the assessment part of this talk: talent and tech. This is what the report looks like. Within those 10 sections, we took a sample of 318 marketers and entrepreneurs. There's about 1,500 companies have used it to date, so we have a pretty good data set to look at. When they rate themselves across the different sections, business cores and marketing cores are the strongest universally. And those are things like within business cores, maybe competitive advantage, pricing model, leadership team. Marketing cores may be something like brand awareness, overall team strength. But when we start getting into team and talent, or talent and tech, that's where we start to see the flaws that keep organizations from achieving what's possible. In doing the research for the book, I came across a lady by the name of Anita Newton. She's the VP of marketing at AdKnowledge today, but prior to that, she was working at major brands. So this is a quote from a blog post she had written called "Overcoming Extinction." So I was a classically trained marketer who had cut my teeth at Procter & Gamble, negotiated multi-million-dollar deals with the NFL, and received an MBA at Harvard Business School. I was a fossil, a senior marketing executive who was doomed to extinction. She was in her mid-30s when she had this feeling. What she realized was she was on holiday break, and one of the major corporations she was working for, or the corporation she was working for, ran a major ad campaign. Probably spent millions of dollars on it. She saw the ad, and she immediately said, what is the point of this ad? There's no call to action. There's no way for us to track the success of it. And she sent an email off to her boss and questioned the strategy. And the boss said, then do something different. You have whatever budget you want, do it now. And at that moment, she realized that while she knew they needed to market in a different way, she didn't know actually how to do it herself. She didn't know how to build a Facebook page. She didn't know how to A/B test emails. She didn't know how to segment a database. She just knew it needed to all happen. So she left the major corporation and went to work for a startup to force herself to learn. But what we see over and over again is Anita's not alone. 75% of marketers say their lack of skills is impacting revenue in some way. Capgemini tells us that 90% of companies lack necessary digital marketing skills, and one of those core areas is performance monitoring and analysis. So what's happening is marketers actually need to become these hybrids. They need to be able to envision on a strategic level, but then execute on a tactical level. So they need to be able to build, manage, and execute fully integrated campaigns. They have to understand how all this stuff connects, how data enables all of this, and data is the foundation of it, and the analytics that makes that possible. But most marketers, and this is wonderful news to all of you, most marketers are nowhere near where you are already. To just be in a room talking about this is a major step forward for many people. So if you're already living in analytics, you're way ahead of the curve. When we think about the base skill sets of what those hybrids may be, from a data standpoint, it can be pretty basic. You don't have to necessarily be a data scientist to be successful. You just need to be able to understand KPIs and how they connect to business goals. You need to be able to look for anomalies within data. You need to be able to understand how data and analytics can inform strategy. And as we saw in the first slide, most people aren't doing this. They're not able to prove this stuff. On the tech side, I know this is Graham's favorite slide, So this comes from Scott Brinker. So again, if you haven't followed Scott Brinker, how many people have seen this before, the technology landscape? Okay, so this is a really intriguing slide. If you can't make it out, and you most likely can't, each one of those colored dots represents a marketing software company or product. So when Scott first did this in 2011, I believe, he had about 150 or so marketing technology companies. A year later, it was about 350. He took a year off, and then he came back and did this in 2014 because what he figured out was this new stacking system of classes and categories. And there was 940 some companies. Now, he just released, Friday night I saw this, right before I gave a talk on Saturday. He partnered with VentureBeat. If you exclude the bottom two classes of backbone platforms and infrastructure, and I think internet he excluded as well. So just the top three of middleware, marketing experiences, and marketing operations, $21.8 billion in funding for the companies within those three areas. Now that does not include IPOs, mergers and acquisitions, angel funding, and any venture funding that isn't currently within the VentureBeat system. So in essence, what VentureBeat did was they took the data of these companies and they merged the two databases and looked at what was going on. So we think about what this means to marketers, though, is we now have to keep track of all this tech. We were having a conversation with a few people earlier about CRM. CRM's one piece of this. It's an important piece, but it's just one piece. And as marketers, we have lots and lots of choices. Just in the CRM space, there's Pardot, Eloqua, Silverpop, which was acquired by IBM, HubSpot. There's on and on and on within the CRM space alone, and automation space. Now you have to analyze those, but then if we think about what's going on within the performance and analytics space, that's just this top right quadrant. So we have business intelligence. I know Tableau is one of the sponsors today. They would fit in there. You have dashboards, analytics, agile project management, which can inform the analytics side, asset management, marketing data. All of these companies, marketers now have to deal with. There's a statistic from Gartner that says by 2017, the CMO will spend more on IT than the CIO. At that MarTech conference that Graham mentioned, Laura McClellan, who did that study for Gartner, stood on stage and said, I will tell you now, it's already 2017. She said that the CMO today is already spending more on IT than the CIO, and it's because of this chart. But what our data tells us out of Marketing Score is that most organizations are lacking or underutilizing the technology. So these are the 10 pieces of technology that we have people rate their utilization of. Red is bad. It's 0 to 5 would be considered a weakness or a liability. On average, every one of those is red. The second phase we're going to talk about today is building a marketing scorecard. Data without analysis is simply noise. That's where most marketers are. They have data coming in from everywhere. They have Google Analytics. They probably have an automation system. They probably maybe have call tracking, SEO, content. They have all these tools generating all this data. But a mere 9% of marketers actually agree that they know their digital marketing is working. Now, this may be because they're not sure of their strategy, but what we saw early on is they're not even measuring it. So how can they know if they aren't measuring it? 76% of marketers believe measurement is important, while only 29% believe they are doing it well. My favorite part of this slide is actually the part that's not obvious, the 24% that don't even think it's important. When I first saw that stat, I just kind of was like, wait a second, we have to say 76% think it's important? One of the core problems we see over and over again is marketers love to tell you what they did. They like to show you deliverables. Here's a beautiful website. Here's a piece of collateral. Here's a press release that went out. Well, that's nice, but that doesn't tell me the value of what you've done. And if we think about what the C-suite cares about and bottom line results, deliverables don't really mean a lot. And so most marketers build dashboards that show activities. They show they did stuff. They don't show what the outcome of that was. And so that's really where, as marketers, we need to go. We need to take the industry. And again, most of you in the room are probably already moving in this direction or have been there for years and you're waiting for everyone else to catch up. But we have to keep score of what actually matters. This is a screenshot out of HubSpot. We actually work in a number of different automation tools, but we were HubSpot's first partner back in 2008. So we have intimate knowledge of the HubSpot platform. They recently came out with this campaign dashboard, and what it does is it enables you to tag something happening within the system as a campaign, and then you can actually tag each element of it, so like the landing pages, the calls to action, blog posts, keywords, social updates. And what it gives you is an overall view of the performance of that program. So let's say this is an example of a 2013 inbound launch. At the top, you have 22,000 visits, 46 contacts, and 3 customers resulting from that campaign. And then you can go down the line and you can look at how each area of it, landing pages, CTAs, emails, blog posts, social message keywords, how each of those impacted the overall success. So now as a marketer, if you're a CMO, this is great because you may know, okay, I spent $50,000 on this campaign. It resulted in 346 contacts. If this is connected to Salesforce and I know my conversion rates, I can actually predict the pipeline value of that. And I know the value, lifetime value in theory of those 3 customers. And so I now know the ROI of what I did with that specific campaign. And if as marketers we can get down to a campaign level ROI, you're in really good shape. Because what you'll find as a marketer is you're oftentimes creating more value than you're aware of because it's not being properly tracked throughout the funnel. And so sometimes it's just taking credit for what you're really doing and the impact you're having on the organization. So in building a scorecard, just go through 3 quick steps. It's much more in depth within the chapter about scorecards, but 3 basic level things. Prioritizing marketing goals, and it sounds easy, but a lot of organizations struggle to do that. Identifying KPIs and then customizing the funnel. So when we asked the 1,500 or so people, high priority, medium priority, low priority, these 4 overarching goals: build brand at the top of the funnel, generate leads, convert sales, increase customer loyalty. 86% say generating leads is a high priority, 85% say converting sales. Now on the surface that just seems very simplistic, but where it gets interesting is now do a sort of your resource allocation and ask yourself, are our resources properly allocated based on our goals? And what you'll find is a lot of organizations are actually spending a ton of money at the top of the funnel, and they're not really sure how that's actually trickling down and having an impact on lead gen and conversion data, and then how that actually affects the lifetime value of customers and cost of acquisition. So it's a very simplistic exercise, but it helps you start to think about it. And when we look at what are the core metrics or KPIs at each stage of the funnel, these are some of the basic ones. So at the top of the funnel, the main concept is we need to bring more people in. We have to expand our reach. We don't always have to be buying to get at people, to reach people. So we need more website visitors, more subscribers, more social media reach. We need to control those databases. We need to be able to access people and be able to push messages out when needed. Then you're moving into the middle of the funnel, and we're not only looking at lead volume, but the quality of those leads. Do you have a lead scoring system that enables you to know the value of the leads that are coming in? Then at the conversion, lead to sale conversion rates, cost of acquisition, and then at the bottom of the funnel, lifetime value, retention rates, and recurring revenue. Now those might not all be metrics that are extremely relevant to your organization, but we do see it being pretty universal that those are core metrics you can always start and look at and say, are we measuring these? How are we performing? Now there's a free performance pack download that we created as a complement to the book, and it has, I think there's like 9 templates and worksheets within there. And so this one is an example, and you probably can't really read it from the back, but it's just broken up by funnel sections. So we have brand, lead, sales, loyalty, and then it's basically a metric checklist. So you can think when you're talking about, okay, what's our strategy at the top of the funnel? How are we building and measuring brand? There's kind of some metrics that may be helpful to you. And if you're doing more in the area of content marketing, inbound marketing, then the ones I highlighted in orange are ones that may be more relevant there. But again, there's a bit.ly link here. You can download that. In that same performance pack, there's a sample scorecard. So now what we do with organizations is we'll actually build these in Google Drive, and that way the client and the agency can both access them at any given time. But once those KPIs are identified, you can actually just build it out in a simple way, track it by month, track the top of the funnel, or your core metrics at the top. Now, if you have programmers, or if you yourself can do this, you can actually use Google Scripts to automate a lot of this, to pull data out of Google Analytics, to pull it out of your automation tools, and you can largely automate the scorecard process. And then you can design it a little bit to maybe look something like this. So what we do with these is, top of the funnel, you're looking for overall health. If any of those arrows become red, then on the right-hand side are those metrics that tell you, they're supporting metrics that tell you Okay, if visits are down, why? Is our social reach not increasing at the same rate? Are we not building our subscriber base? So it helps you monitor, and again, the idea is at a quick glance, how are we doing at each stage of the funnel? And if we're not doing well, why? Now again, I know Tableau I mentioned is here. If you're in a larger enterprise, you don't probably want to hack it together through just a Google Drive scorecard. You probably want to be looking at a business intelligence solution that has a marketing arm built into it. So in the book, we don't go into great detail, but I know I think all of these people down at the bottom are mentioned. Like for example, Domo, I think raised like 175 million in venture capital funding. Some of these are very big companies. Others are kind of up and coming companies. But I would advise looking at them, because what they do is they'll go out and get the data from all these different sources and they'll integrate it into a single dashboard view. And that can be very helpful as a marketer to not have to waste the time and energy building those scorecards within Google Drive. And the last step is the marketing game plan. High performers connect actions to outcomes. That is basically the recurring theme of the book. We have to move beyond just building task lists. And again, as marketers, that's largely what we do. We have all these incredible project management systems like Asana and Basecamp and Trello, and they're all great, but they enable us to do the action element of this. What we have to be able to do is take data and turn it into intelligence, turn it into informed strategy. From there, we can build actions and do actions, but then we have to be able to connect those actions to the outcomes. And that's where a lot of marketers fail. And the reason a lot of marketers struggle on the strategy side is because the number of strategies and channels available is multiplying. So how many people are familiar with the owned, earned, paid media? Okay, so the diagram over here is this concept of when you're building a strategy, owned media is the things you control. It's your website, it's your database of contacts, it's to some degree your social reach. You can control what you say to those people, how often you communicate with them, and then you can easily monitor their response to it. But if you don't have a lot of reach, and if you don't have a big database, and you don't have a ton of traffic coming into your website, you can create ebooks and webinars and podcasts and do all these things, but no one's going to actually see it. And it doesn't really matter how good it is. And that's where paid media and earned media come in. Paid is the idea of anything you buy. It could, in this day and age, a lot of times it's digital advertising, but a lot of traditional also fits under that. And then earned is third-party credibility. That's where a lot of times PR will fit, social media influencer programs. You're trying to get other people to talk about your product, service, or brand. But when building strategies, we got to think about all of these other elements. And this is the case study I'll share in a moment. Analytics, automation, coding, content, digitalization, all of these things become part of it. And that's why it's really, really hard, if not impossible today, to plan within silos. And when we talked about that hybrid professional earlier, this is why. You have to have a base knowledge of all of these areas to really achieve what's possible and to build performance-driven marketing programs. This is a simple view, and again, it's in that same download. The idea here is on the left, the first column on the left, you have the campaign name. The key is each campaign has a singular primary KPI. So when I'm running blogging, or if I'm doing a lead nurturing campaign, or if I'm doing a content campaign or a speaking campaign, or whatever it may be, as a marketer, I need to know the single thing I'm trying to achieve with it, and then you want to assign a goal value. Because otherwise, you can't go back and look and say, well, what previously worked? And as I'm allocating resources, understand where to do it. So when we think about building strategy, we put things in two buckets. There's builders and there's drivers. Think of builders as marathons and drivers as sprints. Builders are recurring programs that lay the foundation for future success. For example, if you don't have a blog and you launch a blog tomorrow, that blog is not going to have an immediate impact on the success of your company. But it likely will play a critical role down the road of building a foundation that you can grow from. Your marketing technology stack is the same thing. Media relations, setting up analytics, all of these things lay the foundation for success. Drivers, on the other hand, make things happen in a short term, usually a 1 to 3 month period. So for example, if you have a database of 5,000 leads that have never been nurtured, you can put a campaign strategy in place to nurture those people through an email workflow, monitor their engagement rate on the site, monitor how many of them become subscribers to the blog, how many download an asset. You can track the performance of that campaign. and you can then adapt in real time based on performance. And the key to putting these things into these very simple buckets goes back to resource allocation. So we use a point model within the agency. It's actually borrowed from the development model, like agile development with points. We actually assign a point value to every project. And so what you can do, whether you're using points or hours or dollars, however you want to look at it, you can actually then say, well, how much of our time and money and people are going towards building versus driving? And if the core focus of your business is growth, then you want to make sure you have enough going in there. Now, if you're in the startup mode, you may be in the 80-20 model. And these are not what you should be. These are more hypothetical where you may be. But you're going to be doing a lot of building work early on in the startup. You've got to get that foundation in place, so you're not going to be putting as much resources towards the drivers. As you move into early growth, you may get closer to that 50-50 split, and then towards the high growth stage is where you're putting a lot of that money into the driver programs. You have a lot more set up to actually make immediate results happen. So we'll end with a performance-driven marketing case study. The client that I mentioned earlier is 3D Connection. They make 3D mice. So anyone who works within CAD design would use the 3D mouse. They're the largest market share holder in the world for 3D mice. It enables you to basically, if you're not familiar, if you were doing video game development, architecture design, you can reach in and manipulate. A product design, I'm sure, they may use 3D mice. It's like reaching your hand into the screen and manipulating it. So it enables you to have that function. So they came to us and they wanted to infuse sales into their pipeline, new leads in the pipeline, segment and prioritize their existing database of 10,000 plus contacts, drive short-term sale opportunities to their web store. So if there's 10 CAD users or fewer within an organization, they want to push those to a web store. If there's more, they want that to go to an enterprise sales. Because you have organizations like, say, GE that probably has thousands of CAD users within the company. They want an enterprise salesperson touching those. So what we did is we said, well, we've got this great database, let's do a survey, and let's turn it into a CAD user report. So we'll do a state of the industry sort of report. So we built the survey, but the key here is rather than using a standard survey tool, we built it on a landing page within the marketing automation system, which in this case was HubSpot. Every answer they gave was tied to their CRM record within the company, and then we had a lead scoring system that was grading them based on their responses. And then based on how they responded, we could actually drop them into an email workflow that either pushed them to the web store with a coupon code or pushed them to enterprise sales. So when we think about building strategy today, these were all the elements that went into conceiving of and executing that strategy. So you had an integrated approach, database segmentation, lead scoring, survey, social sharing. We were hoping to get 400 responses. We did an A/B test of the subject line to the first 1,000 contacts. We had over 400 responses to that A/B test. And that's when we knew we were onto something. The results of that were, this is only like the first 10 or 14 days of data, almost 2,000 survey responses, almost 2,500 ebook downloads of a secondary CTA that said, thanks for taking it, here's an ebook on design. Almost 2,500 downloads, 1,700 new contacts, 2,500 web store leads, and almost 1,200 sales opportunities. Now, because it's connected to Salesforce, we could actually then in real time predict the pipeline value of all those opportunities that were coming in. So again, what I would say is you're already a step ahead by being here, by thinking in a new way about marketing analytics. This helps you hopefully put a little framework to building strategy around the analytics, do the assessment, build a scorecard, build an informed game plan. I left a couple minutes for questions, but I am going to be around for the next couple hours as well. So if anybody wants to find me, I'd be happy to connect. Or if you don't connect with me today and you want to reach out, please feel free to do so as well. Thank you.